10. The corner shot. You may have seen a movie or TV show where a character's been able to miraculously shoot a bullet around a corner. But most people would be shocked to know that it's actually possible to do this in real life with the right weapon. The corner shot is about the size of a rifle and has a hinge allowing it to be folded 90 degrees. It's not able to shoot on its own and instead acts as a frame for another weapon, usually a handgun, which is placed in the front compartment in order to take the shot. Obviously, the operator of the weapon needs to know exactly what they're aiming at, and this is achieved by advanced cameras situated on the front end of the weapon, which feeds back to the user at the other end through a small screen that shows what's lurking around the corner. The trigger of the gun is attached to a linkage system that's installed on the corner shot, allowing users to be able to shoot it like a rifle. This means that operators don't need to break cover in order to shoot, keeping them out of the line of fire and potentially saving lives. Alongside its offensive capabilities, the corner shot also has some supportive functions as well. It can become a powerful surveillance tool, since using a bipod allows its users to set the gun down so they can observe what's going on around the corner. This feed can also be tapped into remotely, and some variants even have a microphone attached to listen for any potential threats or secret conversations. The corner shot does have its drawbacks though. For example, trying to aim around a corner while only using a camera is extremely difficult, especially if the user of the weapon is trying to get a precise shot. Also, for something that's the size of a rifle, it doesn't really pack a punch because you can only attach small handguns to the frame. Despite this, though, the corner shot has been used by some countries and even various police forces as a useful raid tool. 9. GCV Hybrid Tank. Usually, tanks are powered with gas turbine engines, but one company is looking to change this, at least partially. BAE Systems announced a concept in 2012 for a hybrid ground combat vehicle, GCV, as part of a competition held by the US military to find a replacement for the Bradley fighting vehicle, which was over 30 years old at that point, having first been deployed in 1981. Its hybrid electric drive means that it's primarily powered by an electric motor, cutting down on fuel costs and also allowing the tank to be able to get up to speed while moving silently. This is ideal for a combat vehicle designed to get soldiers into an area fast, and for night missions where they need to remain undetected. Within its steel core hull, the GCV can carry 3 crew members and 9 squad members. It's also fitted with an integrated electronic network and embedded intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance equipment. It has a top speed of 43 miles per hour and can apparently do 0 to 20 in 7.8 seconds, which isn't too bad for a 70-ton tank. One of the main advantages of the GCV is the amount of fuel that it's able to save while idling. You might think that the military would be more interested in how much fuel the tank saves while it's moving and operating. However, machines such as this spend a majority of their time sitting still, rather than actually engaging in missions. But thanks to its massive size, it's still quite fuel dependent, reaching 0.73 miles per gallon. It's unknown how far this concept got in the competition, but it's definitely a great insight into some of the tanks and weapons of the future. 8. The Flying Tank. What would you get if you fused an attack helicopter and a tank? The answer is the MIL Mi-24 Hind Attack Helicopter. Made by Russia, this behemoth of a vehicle is designed to be able to take multiple hits and keep flying, and it even packs a punch itself. Its fuselage is protected by heavy armor plates that can withstand 50 caliber shots from all sides. The cockpit is built on a titanium top that juts out from the main body of the aircraft and is protected by bulletproof windscreens. As you'd expect, this isn't a small aircraft by any standards. It's 65 feet long and measures 21 feet tall. The Mi-24 has room for 8 passengers on board and can reach speeds of up to 208 miles per hour. When it comes to weapons, the Mi-24 Hind is fully loaded. Depending upon the requirements of whatever mission it's assigned to, it can carry anti-tank guided missiles, mine dispensers, rockets, machine guns, and even bomb pods. The flying tank, as it's affectionately been nicknamed, entered service in 1972, and to this day, it's still used by the Russian Air Force, as well as 58 other users worldwide. 7. The Active Denial System. The ADS, or Active Denial System, is sometimes called the heat weapon. However, unlike weapons such as flamethrowers, it doesn't actually involve any fire at all. Instead, the weapon uses radio waves to inflict pain upon its intended target. It generates a focused beam of tiny radio waves at a frequency of 95 GHz, which is only capable of reaching a physical skin depth of roughly 1/64th of an inch. People who've experienced the ADS firsthand say that it feels like their skin's on fire, but it's not actually burning. Instead, the nerves underneath have been stimulated to create this painful sensation. However, 2 people did experience burns during testing of this weapon in 1999 and 2007. But miraculously, the beam from the ADS reportedly doesn't leave any marks or long-lasting effects on the body once you're out of its field of effect. Unfortunately, it's unknown whether the ADS has ever been used in a real-life situation, although there are 2 prototypes of the device known to exist. 6. Robo-dogs. Dogs have served in the military for countless years, but at one point, US Marines were considering obtaining some robotic canine companions to help them on the battlefield. The first prototype was more of a robotic mule than a dog. It came to be known as the Leg Squad Support System, LS3 for short, and it was designed to be able to lighten the load of traveling foot patrols. Amazingly, it was able to carry up to 400 pounds or more of weight, while at the same time easily navigating rugged terrain. The machine, which looks like a headless pack mule made of metal, was created as part of a 2.5-year contract between the Pentagon and Boston Dynamics, a project that reportedly cost $32 million. In July 2014, the Robo Mule made its debut at Rim of the Pacific, the Pacific region's largest military exercise. It was then put to the test on patrols by Marines, who proved its ability to respond to instructions and cover rough terrain. But as great as the Robo Mule was at making it across the terrain and lightening the load for soldiers, it had one major problem: noise. The gas-powered robot sounded like a lawnmower, meaning that it would give away the troops' position and potentially put them in danger during risky operations. Not only that, but concerns were raised about how soldiers would be able to repair the machine on the battlefield if it broke down. This was where Spot came in. Spot was a lot smaller than LS3, around the same size as a large dog. But even though it solved the noise issue, it also suffered from a lack of functionality, as it could only carry 40 pounds of cargo, which was 10 times less than LS3 could manage. Despite this, some military officials remained optimistic that Spot could be a useful reconnaissance unit. However, at this time, both LS3 and Spot have been shelved for the foreseeable future. But with so many recent advances in robotics, it's possible that they may come out of retirement with new upgrades in the future. Do you think we'll see robotic soldiers utilized in combat in the next 10 years? Let us know in the comments down below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. 5. PEP. The PEP, or Pulsed Energy Projectile, is a bit like the phasers from Star Trek. Thought up by the US military, the weapon would work by sending a plasma pulse toward a target. This would then supposedly vaporize the first thing it hit, which usually was the air, heating it up to the point where the air would essentially explode, sending a shockwave toward the target to momentarily blind them, knock them off their feet, and disorientate them. By 2002, the PEP was nearing completion and was scheduled to be operational by 2006. Unfortunately, though, it appears that the project never progressed beyond testing, since there hasn't been any public mention of it since then. This might be due to the PEP's operational constraints. At the time, the goal was to install the laser on a vehicle, plane or helicopter, and fire it from a safe distance to hold rioters, snipers, or troops without endangering service members. But it weighed 500 pounds, so it was likely impractical to implement. The good news is that the technology actually works, so it may be adapted in the future. 4. Dolphin Soldiers. The US Navy and Russian forces have something in common. They both have military dolphins enlisted in their armies. During the Cold War, Russia and Ukraine were part of the Soviet Union, and the Russian military dolphin program began in the 1960s. The program was handed over to Ukraine after the dissolution of the Soviet regime. However, when Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, where the dolphin training facility is located, they took over operations once again. The US Navy trains its bottlenose dolphins in San Diego alongside sea lions, who are also utilized in military operations. But why would the military want to enlist sea lions and dolphins? The answer is that these animals make great reconnaissance and search units, able to find various items on the seabed, as well as undersea mines, divers, and submarines. They're both able to achieve their goals in different ways, with the dolphins using sonar to detect things, and sea lions having impeccable night vision underwater. By having these aquatic helpers on their side, the Navy can also cut down on manpower. A small boat with 2 handlers and a dolphin or sea lion can easily replace and do the same job as an entire ship, which would need to be crewed with multiple personnel, doctors, and equipment. Reducing the number of people involved puts fewer lives at risk. In terms of whether the dolphins have been trained to attack, this seems unlikely. Often, these animals can't tell the difference between friend and foe, which could lead to disaster if they attack the wrong person or vessel. 3. The Puckle Gun. The Puckle Gun, or the defense gun as it was sometimes called, is one of the earliest examples of an automatic weapon. It was surprisingly patented back in 1718 by a lawyer from London named James Puckle. What's even more interesting than the fact that it was one of the earliest examples of automatic weaponry were the rounds the weapon used. The Puckle Gun was equipped with both round and square bullets, and each one had a different intent and target. Round bullets were thought to be less damaging, and so these were designed to be used in the Puckle Gun when it was fired at Christian enemies. The square bullets were reserved to be used on the Turks, who were of Muslim faith, as it was believed that they would cause the most destruction and ultimately convince the Turks of the benefits of Christian civilization, as quoted from the patent. But why invent a gun designed to bring maximum damage to Turkish foes? At the beginning of the 18th century, the Ottoman Empire had taken control of most of Southeast Europe, Western Asia, and North Africa, and was entangled in a series of conflicts with European countries. The Ottomans were advancing into Eastern Europe, converting captured Christian populations to Islam. The Ottomans also controlled the Mediterranean Sea, performing raids on trade ships and other vessels. Their fast boats meant they weren't easily countered by the larger and heavier European warships of the time, meaning the Ottomans could easily board and capture vessels with ease. This was what James Puckle invented his Puckle Gun for. Instead of trying to aim a cannon at the nimble Ottoman fleet, the gun could be mounted on the deck and be used to take down the Ottomans as they attempted to board the ship. The Puckle Gun was likely the first machine gun. However, it wasn't able to work at the rapid pace of modern machine guns, since an 18th century musket could only fire 3 shots a minute. The Puckle Gun, on the other hand, could fire 9. The technology of the time would be the downfall of Puckle's creation though. It was trialled in 1717, when the flintlock mechanism that the Puckle Gun used, which was common at the time, was deemed too unreliable for it to be a success. As a result, backers weren't interested in the weapon, and the Puckle Gun was resigned to the pages of history. 2. The Gyro Jet. The Gyro Jet was one of the more innovative and futuristic gun technologies of the previous few decades. Instead of pressurized gas, the plan was to fire projectiles using burning rocket fuel. Since there was no need to contain pressure, a rocket-firing gun could be manufactured much easier and for a much cheaper price than a typical cartridge-firing cannon. The way it would work was that the rocket ammunition would speed down the barrel as the fuel burned. 4 rocket jets would be oriented to spin the projectile for accuracy, and the bullet would reach the end of the barrel at its maximum velocity. Although the handgun version of the Gyro Jet did sell a few hundred units, the concept never really took off. Most of the guns were bought as novelties and were never actually used in combat. Fundamental accuracy issues prevented the gun from being taken seriously as a real weapon, so ultimately the Gyro Jet was a complete failure. Eventually, the company that created it went out of business, but there are still some Gyro Jet carbines and handguns out there owned by collectors. But don't expect to see them on the battlefield anytime soon. 1. The Vomit Gun. There are weapons out there designed to kill, and weapons designed to immobilize. But did you know, there's a weapon designed to make you throw up? If you suffer from emetophobia, the extreme fear of vomiting, you might want to sit this next listing out. First showcased by company Invicon Inc. in 2007, the weapon was designed to blast radio waves through walls that would make people lose their sense of balance. A side effect of this would be severe motion sickness, which inevitably would lead the unlucky victims to vomit. The company stated that it could be used as a non-lethal way to subdue people. Potential uses could be in hostage situations or when dealing with large amounts of hostiles in combat. The US Navy was certainly interested in this weapon at one point, but it's not exactly clear whether we'll be seeing vomit beams anytime soon. So, at least for now, your lunch is safe in your stomach.
Number 8. The Raid on Zeebrugge. During the early morning hours of April 23, 1918, the British Royal Navy made an attempt to completely block the Belgian ports of Bruges, Zeebrugge, and Ostend. The raid was planned in total secrecy with the intention of sinking outdated ships at the canal entrance. They also wanted to stop German vessels from getting out of the ports. In doing so, the British hoped to stop their enemy from threatening Allied control of the English Channel and the southern North Sea as a whole. The actual assault came after a failed attempt at raiding Zeebrugge a few weeks earlier, which was cancelled at the last minute when changing wind patterns made it impossible to cast a sufficient smoke screen in front of the oncoming ships. During the second try, the Allies managed to sink 2 out of the 3 block ships in the thinnest section of the Bruges-Ostend Canal. But this was not where they originally wanted to sink them, and within days the Germans were able to navigate U-boats in and out of the canal at high tide to get their resources out. There was also a second blocking attempt that actually helped slow down the U-boat traffic, which was never fully restored to its past levels. While the raid on Zeebrugge wasn't a total success, it taught the Allies a couple of valuable lessons that came in handy decades later during World War II. Number 7. Balaclava Submarine Base, Object 825. During the chaotic arms raids that took place between the United States and the Soviet Union after World War II, in the early stages of the Cold War, both superpowers prepared for possible attacks from the other by establishing ultra-secure, heavily fortified military bases around the world. The Soviets established one facility referred to as Object 825 in the small oceanside town of Balaclava on the Crimean Peninsula, an area that has historically functioned as a Russian military port for centuries. Built underground as an official naval installation in 1957, the base was invisible from the perspective of the sea, concealing it from the prying eyes of watchful enemy forces. During the 4 years it was being built, builders blasted away tons of rock to create a 2,000-foot-long tunnel that connected different sections of the facility. The base was designed to withstand the force of a large nuclear attack, and was equipped to effectively respond to one as well. It also functioned as a central repair center for the Soviet Black Sea fleet of submarines. The site was stocked with enough food, water, and other basic provisions to supply its 1,500 staff members for about a month in the event of a nuclear strike. For maximum safety and security, a large set of doors and concrete reinforced gates blocked each section of the base. Object 825 finally closed in 1993 after the Soviet Union crumbled. In 2000, it fell into the hands of the Ukrainian Navy. By then, the site had already been significantly looted and damaged, all of its metal having been removed for scrap pieces. It became a museum in 2003. Russia seized the Crimean Peninsula back in 2014 and is now reportedly considering the possibility of restoring the submarine base for future military use. Number 6. Ark DZ Bunker. During the early 1950s, Yugoslavian dictator Josip Broz Tito came up with the idea of establishing a remote bunker to serve as an emergency shelter for him, top officials, and military leaders. He tasked his army with building the secret facility at the base of a large hill in what is now Bosnia and Herzegovina. Construction started in 1953 and took 26 years. Amazingly, the builders managed to keep it completely hidden from the public, and it remained a secret until Yugoslavia broke apart during the 1990s. Officially named the Armiška Ratna Komanda, or Ark D0 complex, the horseshoe-shaped bunker had over 100 rooms, including living quarters, offices, conference rooms, planning rooms, and everything else needed for the government to operate in the event of all-out warfare. There were 2 kitchens, 5 bathrooms, cable TV access, an operating room, and a communication center. The bunker was built to sustain a 20-kiloton nuclear blast, and it was stocked up to keep about 350 people alive for 6 or so months. It was climate-controlled too, and it had its own water and electrical systems, along with backup systems that could be implemented in case of failure. Tito died in 1980, just 1 year after construction finished, and the bunker was maintained but for the most part not used. During the Bosnian War, it functioned only as a supply base. At one point there were plans to blow it up, but someone rigged the wiring. Today the site is preserved in its original state, making it one of the few remaining undestroyed Yugoslavian historic landmarks. Number 5. Battery 223. There's a mysterious concrete structure along the United States Atlantic coast in Cape May, New Jersey, and to say it looks out of place would be a major understatement. Locals know all about it, but if it's your first time seeing the strange construction, you might be surprised. Officially called Battery 223, the building operated as a harbor defense battery for the U.S. Army's Fort Miles military installation during World War II. It was built in 1943 as part of a bigger modernization program. This saw the construction of multiple fortifications along the country's east and west coasts. With 6-inch thick reinforced concrete walls and a large blast-proof roof, the battery was designed to withstand direct hits from powerful battleships and aircraft. The structure was hidden by sand and dirt. It was also equipped with 6-inch guns that had a 9-mile range. Fortunately, those guns were never actually used to fire at an enemy. Battery 223 was officially decommissioned in 1944 as the war turned in favor of the Allies and advancing technology rendered the site obsolete. The Navy used it for radio communications for a short time after 1958, and in 1962, it became part of the Cape May Point State Park. The site looks much different now than it did 77 years ago. When the battery was first built, it was roughly 900 feet from the shoreline. Today, it sits right up along the water thanks to coastal erosion and rising sea levels, and it's no longer covered in dirt since it's no longer a secret, although greenery still grows all across the roof. Would you explore a secret bunker if you had the chance? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the video so far. Number 4. The Alvera Bunkers. The rural village of Wisetown, which was later renamed Alvera, was established in 1825 in central Pennsylvania. At its peak, 165 landowners called it home. The village had many facilities such as a church, a barber shop, and a general store. When the U.S. entered World War II after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in late 1941, the federal government made it a priority to produce war materials and to establish storage facilities for surplus supplies. During the spring of 1942, authorities took possession of 8,000 acres of land, including Alvera, for this purpose. Although the citizens of Alvera were bought out, the government apparently told them that they'd be able to return one day and that they'd find all their buildings exactly as they'd left them. But this proved false. Residents received cash payouts and instructions to move. The feds then proceeded to flatten the buildings to the ground before constructing an ordnance depot where the town once stood. Betty E. Yoder, whose parents were some of those evicted from Alvera, told the Daily Item in 2017 that her parents received a measly $2,400 for their 58-acre plot of land and used it to buy another farm somewhere else. Officially named the Susquehanna Ordnance Depot, the new facility consisted of 149 igloo-style bunkers that were used for storing TNT. It didn't take long before the government realized they overestimated their need for the bombs, so they emptied out the bunkers and divvied up the parts of the land to new owners, including military and prison owners. The portion of the property containing the bunkers was eventually turned over to the state of Pennsylvania and designated as a game reserve. Most of the Vera Bunkers are still standing today, but they're not always noticeable thanks to the brush and foliage that camouflage them from view. Some of the bunkers are still accessible while others are welded shut. Those that are open tend to be heavily vandalized, and although Elvira's houses were torn down, some of the stone foundations are still visible. Number 3. Maranthal Bunker. Similarly to the other countries who became deeply entangled in Cold War hostilities, Western Germany prepared for the possibility of nuclear warfare by building its own top-secret bunkers, able to house its top leaders and officials if an emergency ever arose. The Maranthal Bunker, found roughly 16 miles south of the city of Bonn, was arguably the most important among the country's covert operating centers. Built inside 2 abandoned railway tunnels between 1960 and 1972, the Maranthal Bunker was successfully hidden beneath remote vineyards and forests. It was so well concealed that some have even described it as West Germany's best-kept secret. The facility was about 361 feet beneath the slate rock and consisted of an east and west section, which were separated by a valley and connected by a narrow passageway. Each section was split up into smaller subsections, and the tunnels connecting them were lined with concrete, had 2 levels, and were equipped with more than one emergency exit just in case. The bunker was designed to withstand an atomic blast and remain self-sufficient in the event of a nuclear war. It had autonomous power, fresh air, and water purifying systems. If violence were to break out in the world, the Maranthal Bunker would have been protected by military units stationed nearby. Above all, the facility was sprawling. Altogether, it contained almost 900 offices and 936 dormitories, and it was capable of accommodating 3,000 or so people for up to a month without help from outsiders. Despite its impressive features, the site was abandoned in 1997 after the decision to relocate the capital of reunified Germany to Berlin was made. All that remains of the Maranthal Bunker today are its gutted and unsealed tunnels, along with its access buildings which have been welded shut. Number 2. Georgia Nuclear Aircraft Laboratory. Hidden in Georgia's Dawson Forest, the Georgia Nuclear Aircraft Laboratory, or the Air Force Plant 67, is a former United States Air Force testing facility that also served as Lockheed's nuclear aircraft testing site. It was built during the early 1950s, and the remote site's main purpose was for developers to determine whether creating a nuclear aircraft was actually a realistic goal. Because the facility's nuclear reactor had no shields, employees had to retreat into underground bunkers anytime it was used. According to rumors, the radiation was so strong that all the trees in the surrounding forest lost their leaves completely. The Georgia Nuclear Aircraft Laboratory closed in 1971, over 50 years ago, yet most of what went on there is a mystery to this day. All that's physically left of the facility are the concrete pilings and husks that were forgotten and left behind, as well as the laboratory's foundation and the remnants of a strange, smaller building. Parts of the site remain fenced off and inaccessible to the public, just as they were when they were used, albeit a little less closely guarded nowadays. The underground tunnels and bunkers that once housed personnel when the reactor was in use have been filled in, but people continue to search for them. There is supposedly no detectable radiation at the site, but we're still not sure if we'd be brave enough to explore the property. Would you? Let us know in the comments below. And at number 1, Bayantal. The remains of a sprawling Soviet airbase called Bayantal can be found in the vast Gobi Desert, 19 miles from the nearest town. A crumbling arch marks the entrance to the property, which has old barracks, aircraft hangars, monuments, supply depots, an overgrown 2-mile-long runway, and more. The concrete is cracked, its metal is rusting, and vegetation has reclaimed many spaces. You could say that Bayantal looks like it was abandoned much longer ago than it actually was. From the 1970s to the 1990s, it operated as the first line of defense against a potential invasion from China. Like many of the USSR's bases, it closed when the Soviet Union fell. The entrances to the old apartment buildings have mostly been sealed off or blocked by collapsed staircases, making the interiors inaccessible to curious visitors. A group of explorers managed to bypass these obstacles and get into one of the buildings back in 2013. But they mostly encountered garbage left behind by squatters instead of anything important or interesting, although they did find a few remnants of past residents including old Soviet newspapers and wallpaper. Nomadic families are known to occasionally set up camp at Bayantal, where they live between and not within the buildings as their cattle graze among the ruins. There are several other abandoned Soviet bases throughout Mongolia, including one in Choibalsan. During their days of operation, the areas surrounding the bases consisted mainly of military personnel and their families. After the Soviet Union collapsed, the local population at Choibalsan shrunk from over 300,000 to only 39,000, turning entire neighborhoods into ghost towns.
8. Record-breaking marine cranes. In 2015, the newly built Hyundai 10,000 floating crane made news headlines for being the world's biggest operating sheer-leg floating crane. The 10,000-ton piece of machinery is equipped with 2 booms, each measuring nearly 600 feet, 183 meters long. The Hyundai 10,000 is also the world's most powerful crane of its kind in terms of lifting capacity. During the same year of the floating crane's debut, construction began on a different type of vehicle called the SSCV Sleipnir. Known as a semi-submersible crane vessel and named for the 8-legged horse ridden by Odin in Norse mythology, the Sleipnir is supported by 8 columns and 2 pontoons. At 720 feet long, with a beam of 335 feet, 102 meters, and a boom length of 472 feet, 144 meters, it's the world's largest machine of its kind. It's also insanely heavy, with an overall weight of more than 300,000 tons, and booms weighing 1,615 tons each. The main hoist is capable of lifting up to 11,000 tons, and can raise objects as high as 443 feet, 135 meters above the waterline. Upon its completion in 2019, the Sleipnir surpassed the previous record holder, the SSCV Thielf, as the world's most formidable semi-submersible crane vessel. Both machines are owned and operated by a Dutch company called Hirama Marine Contractors. The company also owns the world's 3rd largest SSCV and is responsible for the construction of several other similarly massive machines, which are necessary for operating in the rough waters of the North Sea. 7. NEOM. In 2017, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman announced his plan to build a smart city called NEOM in the country's northwestern province of Tabuk. With a projected cost of $500 billion, the project is part of an effort to diversify Saudi Arabia's oil-dependent economy. Based on a new concept called zero-gravity urbanism, the sprawling 10,200 square mile, 26,418 kilometers squared metropolis will be over 33 times the size of New York City. It will have as many as 10 main districts, including a city composed of 2 parallel mirror-covered skyscrapers stretching 106 miles, 170 kilometers from the coast to the mountains. According to the plans, it'll house 9 million people. Mohammed's vision for NEOM also includes flying taxis, high-speed rail, and a floating industrial complex called the Oxagon, located along the Red Sea coast. It'll operate as an advanced and clean industrial center and shipping hub. For outdoor enthusiasts, a site in the Sarwat Mountains called Trojena will offer a year-round ski resort, an interactive nature reserve, mountain biking, water sports, and a wellness facility. In addition to NEOM's ambitious futuristic infrastructure, Mohammed said that it will operate independently from the existing governmental framework, with its own tax and labor laws and an autonomous judicial system. Excavation for the project finally began in late 2022. But many people remain skeptical that NEOM will turn out to be the sci-fi-like city of the future that Mohammed envisions it as. Only time will tell. 6. Gothard Base Tunnel. One of the biggest challenges of shipping goods between certain parts of northern and southern Europe is getting them across the Alps, which stretch nearly 750 miles across 7 countries. Until recent years, the vast majority of cargo was transported by truck via winding mountainous roads and tunnels. However, increased traffic over the years has filled these routes to their capacity, and the introduction of the Alpine Protection Act in 1994 required as much cargo as possible to be shifted over to train transport. By then, developers had already started entertaining the idea of a flatter, more direct, and more efficient route through the Alpine Barrier. In 1999, work began on the Gothard Base Tunnel, a 35.5-mile-long, 57.1-kilometer, low-level railway tunnel that cuts straight through the Alps, reducing transport time and providing travelers with a faster connection than the region's roads offer. The new railway would also reduce the dangers of truck-related accidents and the pollution that the heavy vehicles release into the environment. The Gothard Base Tunnel was finished in 2016, and it served its purpose well since its official opening the following year. It's the first flat route through the Alps, or any mountain range for that matter, and is the world's longest railway tunnel. At a maximum depth of 8,040 feet, 2,450 meters, or just over 1.5 miles, 2.4 kilometers, it's also the world's deepest structure of its kind. Building the tunnel was difficult and dangerous. 9 workers lost their lives throughout its construction. Engineers drilled and blasted through 73 different kinds of rock and excavated nearly 31 million tons of rock to create the passageway. The project took nearly 17 years and cost more than $12 billion, but was completed on time and within budget. Around 2/3 of the 130 to 160 trains that pass through the tunnel every day are freight carriers, while the rest are filled with passengers who are happy to shave anywhere from an hour to 2 hours and 40 minutes off their travel time. 5. China's Tibetan Mega Dam. In 2021, after announcing its goal to become carbon-free by 2060, the Chinese government revealed its plans to build a hydroelectric mega dam in the Tibetan Autonomous Region that would make the country's Three Gorges Dam, which is currently the world's largest structure of its kind, look insignificant in comparison. The project's planners hope to build the facility along the Yarlung Tsangpo River, which runs through the Himalayas at altitudes of more than 16,400 feet and is the world's highest river. It's sacred to Tibetans, who rely on the river for fresh water and don't believe in interfering with nature the way Beijing reportedly plans to by building the dam. In fact, China has built thousands of dams throughout the Tibetan Plateau, giving locals no say over the matter. It's unclear whether the project is underway, but if the dam becomes a reality, it'll produce 3 times as much hydroelectric power as the current record holder. Hydroelectric power is China's main source of energy. Since the 1950s, more than 20,000 dams measuring at least 49 feet, 15 meters high, have been built throughout the country. According to experts, the proposed megadam could be the riskiest structure of its kind ever created. Officials plan to build it along the most remote stretch of the Yarlung Tsangpo River, an area that's highly prone to catastrophic mudslides and some of the strongest earthquakes in recorded history. The location is also very close to a disputed border between China and India, and the construction of the dam could potentially escalate tensions between the countries. Despite the risks, planners seem intent on building the structure at that specific location, which has been described as one of the planet's greatest untapped hydropower resources. When news of the mega dam project broke, it was still in the proposal stage, and authorities disclosed very few details. So, unfortunately, it's unclear where the plans currently stand. Do you truly believe the city of NEOM will be as futuristic and environmentally conscious as its planners claim it will be? Let us know down below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. 4. Africa's Great Green Wall. The Sahara Desert is the world's largest hot desert, and it's not even done growing yet. In recent years, people have become increasingly concerned about what the future holds, as the dry, inhospitable landscape encroaches on the semi-arid Sahel region that acts as a barrier between the desert to the north and the savanna to the south. According to scientists, the Sahara is 10% bigger now than it was a century ago, and they suspect that climate change is at least partially to blame. In fact, people began noticing the desert's growth as far back as the 1950s, when British biologist and environmental activist Richard St. Barbe Baker proposed planting a 30-mile thick, 50-kilometer buffer of trees to contain the expanding Sahara. The idea failed to take off, but was revisited a half-century later in 2002. Leaders and officials from the community of Sahel-Saharan states approved the project in 2005. And in 2007, the African Union endorsed the proposal. They called it the Great Green Wall, but it quickly grew from a tree planting initiative to an organization dedicated to combating desertification and land degradation. In 2014, the eco-friendly search engine Ecosia began working with communities in Burkina Faso, where the organization and its volunteers have planted over 15 million trees and restored nearly 35,000 acres, 14,164 hectares of land. Ecosia's efforts have since spread to Ethiopia and Senegal, where they're also seeing success with regenerating the landscape. As of 2016, 21 African countries were contributing to the Great Green Wall through various projects and initiatives, who are all working toward the same goal. 3. Wasel Tower. In recent years, leaders and developers in the United Arab Emirates have gone out of their way to give Dubai the world's most impressive skyline. The city is home to the world's tallest skyscraper, the Burj Khalifa, which opened in 2009 and stands at a jaw-dropping height of 2,717 feet, 828 meters. It's more than twice the height of New York City's iconic Empire State Building, and is more than 900 feet, 274.3 meters, taller than the Freedom Tower in Manhattan. Since then, Dubai's quest to establish the world's most awe-inspiring skyline has continued. And as designers aren't just focusing on size, but on giving buildings unique styles that make it impossible to mistake the view for any other city. Construction on one of the city's latest additions, a 991-foot-tall, 302 meters high-rise, called the Wasel Tower, began in 2015 and is ongoing. The Burj Khalifa will make it look small, but the tower will stand out for its distinctive twisting, asymmetrical design. It will also boast one of the world's tallest ceramic facades. The 64-story skyscraper will consist of luxury homes, a hotel, office space, and an 11-floor parking garage. It'll also have a helipad for important and wealthy guests. After numerous delays on the $400 million project, its completion date has been pushed back several times. Officials are now saying that it will definitely be finished by 2024. 2. Evergreen Point Floating Bridge. The city of Seattle is separated from its eastern suburbs by Lake Washington. To get back and forth, drivers have long relied on floating bridges. The first bridge was built in 1963 and carried 4 lanes of traffic, 2 in each direction. Within a handful of years, traffic had become chronically congested. Because the bridge had no shoulder, there was nowhere to pull over when accidents happened, often making the scenes inaccessible to emergency responders. In the late 1960s, local officials began to explore the idea of replacing the structure with an even bigger bridge. They considered building an adjacent roadway, but the idea was ultimately rejected. Finally, in 1997, authorities moved forward with plans for a replacement bridge. Construction on the Evergreen Point Floating Bridge, also known by its official name, the Governor Albert D. Rossellini Bridge, finally began 14 years later in 2011. Engineers designed it to be much sturdier than the first bridge, and they also included shoulders as well as pedestrian and bike paths. And in 2016, the new bridge officially opened, measuring 7,710 feet, 2,350 meters long, and 116 feet, 35.4 meters across at its midpoint. It's the world's longest and widest floating bridge. The roadway sits on 77 concrete pontoons, which float on the lake's surface and are secured in place by anchors. It's built to withstand earthquakes, heavy wind, and other extreme weather, and is equipped with ample safety features to prevent disaster if the bridge does malfunction in some way. The project came at a cost of $1.2 billion, which authorities are hoping to pay off by 2056 with money collected from tolls. 1. 1915 Çanakkale Bridge. Western Turkey's Çanakkale province is home to a nearly 3-mile-long, 4.82-kilometer suspension bridge that stretches over the Dardanelles Strait. Straddling the continental boundary that runs through the country, it links the European town of Gelibolu, also known as Gallipoli, to the Asian town of Lapseki. It's called the 1915 Çanakkale Bridge, but it's actually much newer than its name implies. Discussions about a bridge crossing the Dardanelles Strait began back in the 1990s, but it wasn't until 2016 when the project finally got underway. Construction began the following year with a slated completion date of September 2023, but it was finished a year and a half early. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan officially opened the bridge on March 18, 2022. It was named in honor of the year when the Ottoman Empire successfully thwarted an attempt by Great Britain and France to seize control of the Dardanelles during World War I. At 15,118 feet, 4,608 meters, it's the longest bridge in Turkey and the world's longest suspension bridge. With a central span of 6,637 feet, 2,023 meters, the Çanakkale Bridge surpassed the previous record holder, Japan's Akashi Kaikyo Bridge, by roughly 100 feet, 30 meters. Measuring 1,096 feet, 334 meters high at its tallest point, it's also the country's tallest bridge, and the world's second tallest. The gargantuan structure carries 6 lanes of traffic, 3 in each direction, and has 2 walkways on each side for maintenance. Building the colossal roadway came at a hefty price tag of $2.7 billion, but will save the country an estimated $458 million per year in reduced fuel consumption costs. The Çanakkale Bridge has also decreased the travel time across the Dardanelles from an hour and a half by ferry to just 6 minutes by car, making the commute between the shorelines more convenient than ever before. Which of these projects did you find the most interesting? Let us know down below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.